These democratic socialists at another of their conventions, they were told to make jazz hands instead of clapping, lest some delegate suffer sensory overload. And also, and I'm not joking, they were told not to be wearing, any aggressive scents.
Please don't go into that space with anything that's like an aggressive scent, for instance, right? Because that's going to be difficult for people.
Oh, for sake. This is who the Democrats are thinking of following? City-run grocery stores? No, I don't want that. I want a Democrat who reassures me if you like your Whole Foods, you can keep your Whole Foods.
Bill Maher is known for speaking his mind, especially when addressing issues within his own political side. In this moment, he shares strong criticism of certain Democratic decisions, raising concerns about how they could play out in the future. With his signature humor and direct style, he delivers commentary that is both thought-provoking and engaging. Make sure to subscribe for more insights and discussions. There's a lot more coming up next.
That if you don't see it right away and go along, you're bad, stupid, and deplorable. As if you were saying, duh, 2 + 2 = 5. Isn't that obvious? Yeah, it's obvious you can't add. You can't just say math is racist. Healthy at any weight? If the men's football team played the women's team, it would be a tie. You can't just say.
Maher didn't hold back as he criticized certain trends within his own party. He pointed out that simply following popular narratives is no longer enough to win public support. According to him, people today are more informed and attentive, and they carefully examine what leaders say. He emphasized that audiences are no longer passive. They question statements, look for consistency, and expect honesty. His message was direct. When communication feels unclear or disconnected from reality, it can weaken public trust. He suggested that ignoring contradictions or relying on messaging that doesn't fully align with facts can lead to skepticism among voters. Over time, this can create a gap between leaders and the public, and when that gap grows, it can have real consequences in terms of credibility and support.
Democratic socialism is like a dating profile. Things look great until you meet up in the real world. For example, Bernie Sanders, his big thing was always bringing single-payer health care to our country of 340 million. But when liberal, tie-dyed Vermont tried to do it for a population of 626,000, it collapsed like that poor the Oval Office last week. Bernie, AOC, Mandani are not Democrats. They'll be the first to tell you that. They're democratic socialists, and that's a very different thing, and I don't think people know that.
Maher continued by turning his attention to the direction of his own party, expressing concern about its increasing openness to socialist-leaning ideas and candidates. He described it as a significant political risk, pointing to polling that suggests a shift in how some voters view economic systems. According to him, this shift isn't just symbolic. It reflects a broader change in messaging that could influence how the party is perceived. He argued that certain labels and policy approaches may not resonate with all voters, particularly those who remain cautious about government involvement in the economy. His message was straightforward. When political messaging moves too far from what many consider familiar or comfortable, it can create hesitation among voters. Over time, that hesitation can impact trust, public perception, and ultimately electoral outcomes.
I don't think people realize we already have a lot of socialism. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, unemployment insurance, food stamps, veterans benefits, Pell Grants, COVID-era payments, farm subsidies, disability payments, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, corporate bailouts, and the jobs program that is building weapons the Pentagon doesn't even want. All that is socialism. Much of it appropriate to soften the edges of capitalism, but the DSA are radicals about this concept, and radical economic policy is always ineluctably married to radical social policy. Their platform, for example, calls for completely open borders. Therefore, what Biden was doing, but more. You think you're going to win an election on that?
Bill Maher pointed out that the United States already includes programs that reflect elements of shared public investment in everyday life, such as Social Security, Medicare, public education, and emergency services. He acknowledged the important role these systems play in supporting society. However, his concern focused on maintaining balance. He cautioned that emphasizing one set of ideas too strongly could shift the party's image in a way that may not connect with a broader range of voters. According to him, messaging matters, and how policies are presented can shape public perception. Maher also reflected on past moments where certain political strategies did not resonate as expected, suggesting that ignoring voter concerns can lead to unintended outcomes. He believes the current direction could present similar challenges if not carefully considered. His overall message centered on awareness and strategy, encouraging a thoughtful approach to change while staying connected to public sentiment. The key, he suggested, is learning from past experiences to avoid repeating the same mistakes.
It's either defund the police or military in the streets. Either MAGA's crypto crony capitalism or city-run grocery stores. No, I don't want that. I want a Democrat who reassures me if you like your Whole Foods, you can keep your Whole Foods. Governor-elect Spanberger once said about Biden's presidency that, quote, nobody elected him to be FDR. They elected him to be normal. Normal! You know, at this year's DSA convention, or as it's commonly known, Comic-Con, get this, you had to submit a photo of a negative COVID test to get in.
Maher also expressed concern about what he views as a combination of strong ideological messaging and shifting policy priorities within his party. He argued that focusing too heavily on internal alignment and activist-style communication can move the party away from the political center, where many elections are often decided. According to him, when messaging appears more focused on signaling values rather than addressing everyday concerns, some voters may feel less connected. He emphasized that building broad support typically requires reaching beyond core supporters and appealing to a wider audience. His main point was that political success often depends on engaging undecided or moderate voters, rather than only reinforcing existing viewpoints. Relying on language or positions that feel polarizing, he suggested, can create distance instead of strengthening public support. Maher's perspective reflects a concern about strategy, arguing that long-term success comes from maintaining trust, credibility, and a strong connection with the voters who ultimately influence election outcomes.
To me, that there are two pillars that this country is founded on. One is democracy, and one is capitalism, free markets. And it seems like one party wants to get rid of one, and the other party wants to get rid of the other. Right? The Republicans are not that, democracy is just not number one on their list. It just isn't. It isn't. It's behind Christianity and a few other things. And the Democrats, I mean, I read these 74%, are for democratic socialism. Only 16% favor capitalism. Is this going to be a country that I don't recognize in 5 to 10 years if we don't have these two pillars?
Maher also pushed back on frequent claims that democracy is in immediate danger, arguing instead that a key challenge for his party may be staying aligned with a broad range of voters. He suggested that internal shifts in priorities and messaging could have a significant impact on how the party is perceived. Referencing polling trends, he noted changing attitudes among some voters and raised the possibility that these shifts could influence future candidates and party direction. According to him, the concern is less about labels and more about how policies and ideas are received by the wider public. He emphasized that appealing to moderates and independent voters remains essential for electoral success. If messaging or positions move too quickly away from what many voters are comfortable with, it can create distance rather than support. His overall message was clear. Maintaining a strong connection with the broader electorate is key, and political strategies work best when they reflect both current realities and voter expectations.
The Democrats going with this. If Mondami is the face of the Democrats on the East Coast and Katie Porter is the face on the West Coast, I don't know if that's great politically.
Maher was direct in his warning that if the party continues in its current direction, it could face challenges in gaining broad national support. He framed his concern around political realities, noting that outside of strongly aligned regions, many Americans remain cautious about major shifts in economic systems. For many voters, the current system, despite its flaws, is still associated with opportunity and stability. Because of that, he suggested that messaging perceived as too critical of it could create hesitation among a wider audience. Maher's main point was that most people are not necessarily looking for a complete overhaul, but rather practical improvements that make existing systems work better and feel fairer. He emphasized the importance of clearly distinguishing between reform and more sweeping change. According to him, if that line becomes unclear, it could impact how voters respond. His overall message focused on strategy. Maintaining broad appeal and trust is essential, especially when it comes to winning and sustaining political support.
These Democratic socialists at another of their conventions, they were told to make jazz hands instead of clapping, lest some delegates suffer sensory overload. And also, and I'm not joking, they were told not to be wearing, any aggressive scents.
Please don't go into that space with anything that's like an aggressive scent, for instance, right? Because that's going to be difficult for people.
Maher made it clear that he's increasingly frustrated with what he views as an overemphasis on messaging and internal debates within his party. He argued that too much attention is sometimes placed on symbolic gestures and trending narratives, while everyday concerns of voters may not receive the same focus. According to him, this approach can create a disconnect between party priorities and the issues many people care about most, such as jobs, cost of living, safety, and stability. He suggested that when those concerns feel overlooked, voters are more likely to take notice. Maher also expressed concern that focusing too heavily on smaller, highly engaged groups could make it harder to connect with the broader electorate. In his view, long-term success depends on maintaining that wider connection. His overall message was a strategic warning. Prioritizing broad public trust and addressing practical issues is essential. Without that balance, he believes the party could face challenges in future elections.
Democrats today have gone out of their way to post messages on social media about the current Trump administration and what's happening to American lives. The problem is they're all literally saying the same damn thing. Don't believe me? Check it out.
I win, I will immediately bring prices down starting on day one.
That ain't true. That's what you just heard. Since day one of Donald Trump's presidency, prices are not down, they're up. Inflation is getting worse. The prices of grocery, gas,
Now you see why Stephen A. Smith was in the polls as a presidential candidate? See what I'm talking about? You see that idiocy right there?
Maher isn't alone in expressing concern about the direction of the Democratic Party. Others, including media personality Stephen A. Smith, have also shared similar observations. Smith's perspective focuses less on ideology and more on communication, results, and overall credibility. He has questioned whether highly visible gestures and headline-driven moments truly resonate with voters or lead to meaningful outcomes. According to him, many people are looking for clear leadership, practical solutions, and a sense of authenticity in how issues are addressed. These viewpoints reflect a broader discussion about political strategy and public connection. When voices from different backgrounds raise similar concerns, it can highlight deeper questions about priorities and messaging. Overall, the emphasis remains on building trust, communicating clearly, and staying aligned with the needs and expectations of a wide range of voters.
22 Democratic senators be literally echoing the same thing and think that would resonate with the American people. All it shows is that the same fabric of our democracy is unchanging in the eyes of some of these officials, and as a result, the constituency they represent, which is why Donald Trump is in office. What, do I have to come up to Capitol Hill and give you lessons? Seriously, you don't get it? Oh, you did. Elizabeth Warren, Cory Booker, Chuck Schumer. Let's all get together. Let's put this in a prompter, and all together, albeit in separate rooms, we'll grab a microphone and say the same damn thing. And that's what's going to resonate with the American people. And then you wonder why you're no longer.
In the end, Maher's warning doesn't come from opposition to his party, but from concern about its direction. He expressed frustration that certain messaging and priorities may be creating distance between the party and a broader group of voters. In his view, focusing too narrowly on specific viewpoints can make it harder to build nationwide support. Voices like Stephen A. Smith have raised similar points, suggesting this is part of a wider conversation about communication, strategy, and public connection. Maher's core message is about balance, staying grounded in everyday issues while maintaining a clear and relatable approach. He emphasized the importance of connecting with a wide range of voters and building trust through practical solutions. His takeaway is straightforward. Political success depends on understanding public concerns and responding in a way that resonates broadly. And with that, we wrap up today's discussion.